Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you'll enjoy this legal education content, and today will be the day I earn your subscription. For this video, I want to give a huge hat tip to the channel Angry Cops, who is tagged in the description below, along with the original video where I learned this story, and I wanted to do whatever I could to spread word of this story as well, because I thought it was something that deserved some additional spotlight to the extent I can offer it. So today I want to tell you the story of Sarah Cavanaugh. Sarah Cavanaugh was a staff sergeant in the Marines from 2007 to 2016. She served twice in Iraq and once in Afghanistan. While in Afghanistan, while on patrol, there was an explosion. This explosion caused her and many of her fellow Marines to be injured, and some of them to die. She earned the Purple Heart with Valor because, in addition to her injuries, she was able to help save several of her additional Marines and help get them to safety. Unfortunately, her injuries, while in some senses relatively superficial, were enough to get her discharged from the Marines. Since then, she has had difficulty becoming acclimated to civilian life, as is true for many people who have served. She went through many different nonprofits and independent groups to obtain services and financial support and grants and other sorts of assistance, from one veteran to another, to help her get back on her feet as she tried to acclimate herself back into her civilian life. And apparently with some success. She was able to become a company commander of a VFW hall in Rhode Island. Unfortunately, this was not the end of Sarah Cavanaugh's problems. She apparently developed cancer that apparently metastasized to her brain, leading to a apparent fatal diagnosis that this would be something that would eventually kill her. She then went to obtain more money from more organizations in relation to this, including a pledge from Duke Medical to help treat her for free in relation to her cancer diagnosis. Unfortunately, most of what I just told you is complete lies. Sarah Cavanaugh was never injured. Sarah Cavanaugh never had cancer. She was never in Afghanistan. She was never injured. She was never in a roadside explosion that injured her or fellow Marines. She never helped get them to safety, and she never was in the Marine Corps at all. It was all one massive fraud. The part about, her trying to seek the assistance of veteran groups is true, but not much about the story of Sarah Cavanaugh, who never was part of the Marines, never was injured, never received the Purple Heart, never had a diagnosis of cancer. It was all just made up from square one. And this appears to be one of the more extensive frauds when it relates to stolen valor. There are many cases of stolen valor, people claiming to have military badges they don't have, claiming to be Navy SEALs or other things to extol themselves and gain some popularity. But most of the time, or at least very often of the time, this is just as a way to pump themselves up. They don't usually extend to fraud, but this extends to fraud. Obtaining benefits with false representations. So I've tagged several stories in the comments below. Her home has been searched and seized by relevant federal authorities as part of the investigation, and it is only beginning to unravel the total depth of this thing in terms of the amount of money that's been exposed. We are looking at tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential ill-gotten gains, including her position with the VFW, which of course was somewhat premised on her, being a veteran of a foreign war, which she was not. So I want to cover this article that tries to highlight at least some of this story to bring further exposure to it. So this is Sarah Cavanaugh. Here she is in a uniform, wearing medals, showing that she's a staff sergeant, which she's not. In the Marines, which she's not. Earned the medals, which she has not. So, yeah. Let's read this story. Marine Major Thomas Schuterman sat across from a young Marine Corps veteran in a coffee shop and listened to her story. The woman told him her twin brother had been killed in action. Her service-connected cancer had spread to her brain. The bills were piling up and her home was about to be foreclosed on. Sarah Cavanaugh wasn't a stranger. He had first heard of her name when she attended a retreat last Montana through his nonprofit group, Patrol Base Abate. He met her in person several months later at veteran events with different nonprofits, and the pair bonded over a shared passion for humanities and books like the Iliad. I was excited to nerd out about that stuff, Schumann said. As it turned out, Cavanaugh wanted to work for the Patrol Base Abate group, but Schumann had to tell her the group didn't have the funding to hire her. A few weeks later, Sherman stumbled upon a GoFundMe page featuring Cavanaugh. The page featured pictures of her in dress blues and told the picture of her being a Purple Heart recipient who had been injured in an IED blast, saved 2 Marines, and recovered in other bodies, and now suffered from a stage 4 lung cancer that had metastasized to her brain. Schumann immediately arranged the coffee meetup where he talked to her for almost 2 hours. At the end of the conversation, she dropped the bomb that she had 2 years to live, and that was almost 2 years ago. This was the final straw. The active duty Marine, father of 3 children, a nonprofit founder, dropped everything else in his life and started supporting to rally for Cavanaugh. I started leveraging my network to start building a case to support her and doing it with a sense of urgency because who knows when she's going to die. It was just the most heart-wrenching story you ever heard. It was also a lie. What appears to have been a year-long scam orchestrated by Cavanaugh, covering everything from fake, combat-heavy military history to a made-up cancer diagnosis with, incidentally, all kinds of made-up paperwork, including DD-214s and fake hospital bills and all kinds of stuff, which apparently, at eye's glance, looked pretty authentic. Unraveled this week after a sharp-eyed former Marine saw her on Instagram started asking questions. Since at least 2019, Cavanaugh appears to have represented herself as a dedicated Marine Corps veteran in numerous news intervals and solicited donations from veteran nonprofits, including the toxic exposure research and advocacy group Hunter 7 Foundation. She even pushed the deception far enough to be named the commander of Rhode Island's Veterans of Foreign War Post. Here she is, Sarah Cavanaugh, giving an interview relating to this. So, retired U.S. Marine. No. Cavanaugh sent an urgent request for assistance to Hunter 7 in December. According to the executive director, while Hunter 7 is primarily research-oriented, the foundation also has an immediate needs program that helps veterans and their families cover costs associated with treatment for cancer and other exposure-related illnesses. Simone said that Cavanaugh claimed to have stage 4, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that kind of cancer, which can lead to lung, kidney, and other organ cancers connected to military service. When they talked to her over the phone, Simone said the 30-year-old described her condition and military experience using all the right lingo. She was very specific. She said she was engaged as a linguist, and she knew the exact MOS code. The exact code for that exact service, which, most people who are fraudulent don't actually know. It's a good way, quick way, incidentally, to tell someone who's a fake versus someone who's genuine. And I've done this, incidentally, with homeless people who say that they're Marines or say that they're former military. It's like, I just ask them, oh, you're and they're asking for donations. I just say, okay, what was your MOS code? And they don't know the answer. I don't know the answer either, but the fact that they don't know the answer, right? I mean, they could just make up a number and I wouldn't know if it's authentic, but the fact they don't even know what I'm talking about is a pretty good clue, right? That they're not, oh, what was your MOS code? They don't know. So it's a good quick spot, incidentally, for a fraud. Simone says she broke down in tears over the Cavanaugh story. The reserved, soft-spoken woman deserved collapsing and coughing up blood clot before finally being diagnosed with cancer 3 years prior. My heart broke. She got to work connecting Cavanaugh via email with some of the best brain cancer surgeons in the country. Cavanaugh provided the organization with hospital bills, Department of Veteran medical records, and a copy of the DD-214. It all seemed to check out. So she had a pretty elaborate fraud going on here with pretty elaborate fraudulent documents that seemed to be authentic upon some superficial glances. It looked all right. It looked correct. Now, this is probably because, in part, she appears to have started the basis of this fraud based on a real DD-214. The Social Security number in the DD-214 wasn't her Social Security number at all. It was some guy's DD-214 who appears to have really been a Marine. Now, it wasn't his DD-214 either exactly. She had modified it heavily, but it seemed to have started its life as an authentic DD-214 that she modified based on other things to help meet her story. And then, of course, being involved in the VFW and being the commander of the VFW, she had access to all kinds of records, which would help her further elaborate the fraud because she knows what to do. She knows what to say. She knows what to put in verdant documents. She knows what authentic documents looks like. So there's all that. So it all looked kind of authentic at first glance. As Simone did with many of the veterans who come to them, she shared Cavanaugh's story on Hunter Seven's Instagram page. That's where Lieutenant Commander Amy Forsythe saw it. Now a Navy Reserve Public Affairs officer, Forsythe spent 18 years in the Marine Corps as a public affairs officer. 18 years in the Marine Corps. That's a lot of experience, right? As soon as she saw the picture accompanying the post, alarm bell sounded in her head. The picture didn't seem right. Initially, it was a uniform, Forsythe told Coffee or Die magazine, emphasizing it was speaking from her own experience as a Marine, not as a Navy spokesperson. Cavanaugh had her collar on backwards, and her earrings were out of regulation, Forsythe said. So some details were wrong for someone who served in the Marines. Right? You would know that. And if you're not in the Marines, you might not know that. There's small details. I mean, the earrings in particular, you could, I guess, forgive. She's not active duty anymore. So the fact that the earrings are out of spec, I mean, could be explainable, I suppose. But the collar being wrong? I mean, would you screw that up? If you're wearing your dress uniform, would you put your collar on wrong? I don't think so. I mean, I think you would know how to do that. The earrings being out of spec, yeah, I guess you could explain that away. The collar, not so sure about that one. As she read over Cavanaugh's claim, they didn't add up. The Post had said Cavanaugh earned her Purple Heart and Bronze Star with the V citation, which is the fourth highest declaration for valor in terms of assisting her other Marines while injured. This all apparently happened while Forsythe was a public affairs officer in the Marines. And Forsythe said to herself, hey, wait a second, I'm a public affairs officer for the Marines. At the time this is happening, there has been a woman injured in combat to the point that she has gotten the Purple Heart with the Valor citation, which is the fourth highest award. I think that might have come to my attention. It's not like I'm the only public affairs officer in the Marines, but it probably would have circulated the rounds at the water cooler, as it were. I knew nothing about it, even though this occurred during when I was a public affairs officer at the Marines. That seems kind of weird that I would know nothing about it at all. The red flags keep coming. For one, she seemed too young at 30 years old to have plausibly been in the middle of the fighting between 2007 and 2013. Also, perhaps even more notably, she claimed to have joined the Marines in 2007 when she would have been 16 years old. So, that's a problem. Joining the Marines at 16? I don't know, man. I don't know. That seems a little bit off. Don't know about that one. Since you have to be, 17 bare minimum with parental permission to join the military. 16 seems a little young when it's below the bare minimum of 17. To confirm suspicions, Forthright posted in a Facebook group for female Marines asking if anyone could find a record. No one could. Within 24 hours of seeing the post, one thing was crystal clear. I've never seen anyone who fakes so much. At first, they couldn't believe it, which is a perfectly reasonable response. Because you're seeing all this evidence that looks really, really good, right? All the evidence kind of looks right. And so so a reasonable conclusion is, wait, I don't believe this counter evidence. Because this other evidence is really, really good, right? This other evidence is persuasive. So you have conflicting evidence. And your brain is naturally trying to weigh this conflicting evidence. And so it could be a whole bunch of reasons. It could be bias in terms of like just trying to affirmation bias, just trying to like affirm what you already know. So there could be some logical bias in there, but it's not even clear that's true. Because you have a whole bunch of evidence which superficially seems right. And you have some evidence, well, you have some real good documentation, real thorough documentation, which seems right. Medical bills and military records and stuff like that, it all seems pretty authentic. And then you have a person whose picture is a little bit wrong. Right? So as you're weighing this competing evidence in your mind from a just purely like straight logical position, putting aside any sort of logical biases or reasoning biases, it's completely reasonable for a person to think, maybe for some reason their color's just wrong. That seems like an odd conclusion, but in the weight of the evidence, as you're weighing the evidence in your mind, it's somewhat of a reasonable conclusion. So yeah, you somewhat doubt the conclusion. Also because someone would have to be truly horrible to fake all that stuff. And, we want to assume people are generally good, which they generally are. People are generally good. So it totally makes sense. So not so sure. So she hid the story from the Instagram, Warren Sherman, and began reaching out to contacts in VA. And then VA said, oh, they're not in our system. I don't know who medical records they are, Simone said, but whatever medical records these are, the 30-year-old patient dealing with cancer, it's not her. Oops. And then they said they received nothing from this particular organization, but it appears that she received lots of money from lots of other organizations. So she may have not received any money from this particular organization, although they started a fundraiser for her, but it appears that they refunded all the money. But not every organization was so lucky in terms of discovering it before money was actually spent. We were horrified to learn that, in fact, this was a circumstance of fraudulent military service, financial and medical treatment records. Upon learning the information, the foundation contacted local and federal authorities, and they swiftly stopped payment on this. One of the donors who had been emotionally gutted by Cavanaugh's story was Kate Manningham. I don't know why I can't pronounce that name right now, but Kate Manningham, a longtime military reporter for Barstool Sports, which is an interesting little segue, I suppose, because we could talk about Barstool Sports at some point. But she was a reporter for them, who maintains a sizable social media following. She broke the news on Monday on our podcast when she wrote, when we see a fellow troop in trouble, our knee-jerk reaction is to help, not pick someone apart and question things. It feels gross she took advantage of that. I hope justice is served and karma is swift. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Hunter 7 is now looking at ways to prevent this from happening in the future by going through some additional verification processes, which is kind of understandable / unfortunate, because it might in some ways inhibit people who are actually seeking help, which after all has got to be the overwhelming majority of people. But now to prevent themselves from being burned, they have to institute these things. This is like why we can't have nice things, because there are people like this. I could have spent the time doing so many other things, Simone said. I literally have a guy who's a Marine recon, who's 32 years old, dying from cancer, and was given 6 to 12 months to live. If I could have put all my attention into that, right, yeah, so it's not just an issue of money, it's an issue of time and energy, which are distinctly non-fungible, unlike money, right? Time and energy are non-fungible. Once it's spent, it's gone. Opportunity cost. People who could have gotten help that they needed. Not to say those people weren't getting help, but, every minute you're spending on a fake case is a minute you're not spending on a real case. So it naturally, necessarily makes you less efficient. It's unavoidable. So she is stealing not only the money from these organizations, but time, which she is then effectively stealing from other veterans. I say other veterans like she's a veteran. Stealing from veterans. When Sherman confronted Cavanaugh about the discrepancies on the DD-214, which listed her as an E4 corporal instead of an E6 staff sergeant, so there's that too. Your uniform is for the wrong rank, so there's that. She said she doubled down, claiming she'd been court-martialed before leaving the Marine Corps because she shot her commanding officer on a ship as he attempted to sexually assault her. What? I mean, so many things. So many things with this claim. Okay, so the reason it lists me as an E4 on my DD-214 instead of an E6, let me get this straight. Let me make sure I got this straight. I really was an E6, but I was court-martialed and reduced to an E4, which immediately sounds wrong. Why not E1? But whatever. I was reduced from an E6 to an E4 because I shot my commanding officer during a sexual assault. Now, I'm no Marine lawyer, and I need to get Crime Talk and talk to him about this. We've been looking for something to collab about. This seems like a good thing to collab about because he's a former JAG. This seems like a good thing to talk about. Me and Marine, I got to reach out Crime Talk. Let's collab about this. Because, I've never been a JAG, although I did apply to be one at one point. But, I had an interest in that possibility. But it seems unlikely to me. It seems like this is kind of a binary thing. It seems like either A, you acted righteously in shooting your commanding officer because it really was a sexual assault, and so it really was self-defense. So you acted righteously in shooting your commanding officer. That seems like possibility number one. Or possibility number two, not that, in which case I would imagine the sanctions would include, some prison time. But, I'm not an expert. Apparently, there's some middle ground between these two options that I had not considered. Apparently, we are not merely in the, it was righteous for me to shoot my commanding officer. That was an okay thing for me to do. Or it was not an okay thing for me to do. Apparently, we're in some middle ground where it's kind of okay for me to do. And as a penalty, I got reduced from E6 to E4. Again, never worked as a JAG, but that doesn't strike me as a plausible result. Seems odd. Then Sherman told the Defense Department identification number belonged to a male corporal. Yeah. She says it's some deep state conspiracy where the Marine Corps is trying to expunge the biggest female war hero in Afghanistan. That's a lot of cover-up, man. I mean, that's a lot of cover-up. So she's really a hero, but because of the sort of okay, quasi-okay shooting of the superior officer, commanding officer even, not even superior officer, commanding officer, because of the sort of quasi-okay shooting of a commanding officer, that they're trying to cover the whole thing up, even though if she really did it righteously because of sexual assault, I mean, it's not Tailhook, and even Tailhook wasn't this bizarre. Cavanaugh portrayed herself as a decorated combat veteran to TV stations and local newspapers. She served as commander of the Veterans of Foreign War Post in Rhode Island from October 2020 until she resigned on Monday, according to the VFC spokesman, who I imagine, among other things, will be suing her for all the money they gave her. Cavanaugh could not be reached for comment ahead of publication, which, makes sense because she's going to jail for the fraud. Many, many frauds. Many, many frauds. Federal government wants a piece of her, and I imagine various state governments want a piece of her as well, for the various frauds in various states to various charities. So, yeah. These women have been really betrayed and hurt. I'm professionally embarrassed, but more than that, I feel bad about the trust that's been violated. I feel bad about this too. So, yeah, I figured that this is an attention worth... This is a story worth giving attention to, because stolen valor happens, and it's not good, because you didn't really earn those things, and you're claiming to earn those things, and that's bad. But then the fraud based on that is very illegal. As some of you might know, but I guess as a point of legal education, why not? The United States Congress, many years ago, tried to pass a law just to make it plain illegal to do this, like just to say that you had rank or medals you didn't have. I think it was called the Stolen Valor Act, as a matter of fact, if memory serves correctly. So they tried to pass a law that just said flat out, it's illegal to do this. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned that law because the First Amendment protects lies. It always has. In terms of criminal conduct. Well, yeah, it protects pure lies unto themselves. Let's be clear. It protects pure lies unto themselves. It's legal to lie. Generally speaking. Obviously, this doesn't apply in some contexts, like if you're swearing an oath to tell the truth on official government documents. But just in your general day-to-day life, it's legal to lie. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, it's legal to lie. So if you want to put on a uniform and some medals and say you're a Marine, it's legal to lie. It's a really douchey thing to do, but it's legal because the First Amendment protects that speech. But when you start doing it for the purpose of obtaining benefits, that's fraud. And that's illegal. So I can only hope at some point that we think that we get some sort of justice out of all this, because this person seems like they're a bad person. I don't know what to say other than that. They're a bad person. They're taking money and attention from people who sorely need it in an effort to like puff their own ego or something. I don't even know. It's all kind of messed up. I want to acknowledge some of the super chats. Anti-Commie gave me $10 saying, let's go, boys. Share this out. Let's get him big and paid so we can do this passion project full time. Help a brother out. Thank you very much, Anti-Commie, for your donation. And $5 from Anti-Commie. FYI, Purple Heart, Medal of Honor, Silver and Bronze Stars, misrepresentation is a federal felony. Not unto itself, it isn't anymore, because, as I mentioned, the Stolen Valor Act was ruled to be unconstitutional. Congress tried, but it's not. So, yeah, you can just say, I have the Medal of Honor, and wear the Medal of Honor like a complete D-bag. And if you're only lying, then unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, that's legal. Because it only becomes illegal when you're trying to do it for some sort of fraudulent purpose or something like that. So unfortunately, merely claiming, unfortunately, I could go out right now, wear a Marine uniform with a Purple Heart and a Medal of Honor and go around to malls and say I'm a Marine, say I'm a wounded veteran, and get sympathy and stuff, and that would be legal. And if people were just giving me benefits, then, they're just giving me things, then that's not fraud. So unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, that's the law. The U.S. Supreme Court said that several years ago. So there is all that. You may, of course, also get knocked out. This is, of course, strong possibilities, which, incidentally, the assault would be illegal. But, what a jury would do in that factual posture, who knows? But strictly speaking, by the letter of the law, right, you can't punch someone out because they lied to you about the stolen valor. That's illegal and may wind you up in criminal conduct. So, there's that. So I don't really have anything more about this. Again, I just want to thank the channel Angry Cops for the link to this, or the story that inspired this video. Make sure to check out the original as well. It goes into a little bit more detail, I suppose, because he knows what he's talking about and I don't, because I never served in the military. So I just, understand what he understands, and I understand it's really illegal. And I understand that this person is facing several charges, probably in multiple jurisdictions. The feds want a piece of her, and then I imagine many other people want a piece of her. So it'll be quite involved for quite some time trying to unpack all this. Sorry, but you don't look the part? That's mean. Alex, that's just mean. I mean, that's mean. I don't know that anyone necessarily looks the part. I mean, obviously in my current configuration I do not necessarily look the part because of my weight. But with all due respect, I've seen people in the military, although not this heavy, but look like all kinds of things. And I've seen people formerly of the military who have let themselves go. So I don't know that I look like the part means anything, but I just take it as an insult. But thanks for saying that. The facial hair, I mean, there are people who used to serve, I'm sure, who have facial hair. I mean, I would imagine, okay. LaFonda Williams says, thanks for covering. You're quite welcome. Thanks for covering. You're quite welcome. So all those good things. All right, so I'm going to sign off for now. Remember to do all the YouTube-y things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you like these kinds of stories. I think it's important to bring attention to things like this, and I hope that you do as well. So please leave comments if you want to see things like this, and if you see other stories that are like this or similar that you want me to bring some sort of attention to, let me know, and we can go from there. So I hope all is well, and until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.